Simon Dixon here. And I was recently invited onto a podcast stroke YouTube channel by Gary Cardone. I often go up on Spaces. He joined the Bitcoin community a few years back. And I often join those X Spaces. If you're not following me on Twitter, make sure you follow me there. And I often do Spaces, and you can come up and ask some questions and engage. But the debate was around custody and self-custody. Now, I don't want anybody to procrastinate in getting into Bitcoin. If you don't own any Bitcoin yet, your job is just, even if you're not a full believer yet, your job is to make sure you get off zero Bitcoin. It is completely irresponsible to have no Bitcoin for all the reasons that I often talk about on Bitcoin Hard Talk and my podcast. And for 14 years, I've been telling people ever since Bitcoin was $3. The current time at the time of this recording, we're at $120,000. And I've been telling people to own more Bitcoin every single month. And so just make sure this month you have more Bitcoin than last month. You don't need to have a whole Bitcoin. You can start with $10 a Bitcoin, $100 a Bitcoin, £100 a Bitcoin, 100 euros a Bitcoin, whatever it is that in your current situation. But if you simply follow that rule of no matter how small it is, get off zero Bitcoin and own more Bitcoin this month than the previous month. Every single person that I know that's done that for a minimum of 4 years, it has beaten every single asset class in the world. And they've engaged in the process of understanding Bitcoin. And personally, I've got a network of hundreds of thousands of people that have gone from absolutely nothing to multimillionaires and billionaires. And I've been through the whole journey myself as well, from going deep into debt to achieving things I never imagined were possible based upon my previous paradigm in a time frame that I didn't think was possible. Now, I can't promise that will happen to you, but I can tell you that I've been given the same advice for 14 years, and I'll continue to give the same advice for the next 14 years if I live that long. And I'll continue to do it for another 14 years after that. So this debate was around self-custody versus custody. So if you're familiar with my content, you know that I talk about the combat to the proof of weapons network is proof of work. And proof of work is the concept behind Bitcoin. You can check out some of my other blog posts in order to understand more about what proof of work is and how Bitcoin works. But the best way to learn is experiential learning. Buying some Bitcoin, setting up a hardware wallet, learning how to self-custody Bitcoin, sending some Bitcoin from an exchange to self-custody, and just getting through that barrier and doing it through experience, because I could tell you everything. And make mistakes along the way, start small. But the debate was around custody versus self-custody. And so one of the benefits ideologically, as well as being able to own your own money, spend your own money, and have a monetary policy that's fixed and therefore has digital scarcity, which has outperformed every asset in the world, every fund manager in the world, whether it be real estate, gold, stocks, bonds, and just added so much less complication in people's life, because once you understand Bitcoin, you don't have all the complications of all the other asset classes. You know, I've invested in over 100 different Bitcoin companies. All those companies come with hassle. And then if you start going down the crypto market, you end up with all the complications. I've got other videos that covered that. But in this intro, I just wanted to say that ideologically, Bitcoin is the ultimate boycott of the proof of weapons network. So if you don't want your money to be funding war, then you have to exit it from the Federal Reserve System and the proof of weapons network. And so by having money that you can own without a bank and spend without government permission, and a monetary policy that's fixed and that will never change, even no matter what any central banker in the world does, you get the ultimate boycott. And so the first job is to own some Bitcoin. And then you're like, where do I store it? And you end up leaving it in an exchange, and there's reasons why you shouldn't do that. That's called custody. or you leave it with a custodian, someone that's set up to store your Bitcoin for you, or you end up buying it through stock like a Bitcoin ETF. I just want you to get started initially. But I would like you, I recommend everybody to try and buy their own Bitcoin rather than going through a ETF initially. And then experience buying a hardware wallet and storing it in a hardware wallet. That's going to be the hardest journey you'll ever go through. It's not even that hard. There's many videos out there. You could just sit there and watch someone open a hardware wallet, go through the process. It's like the first time you write email or the first time you use an ATM card at a cash machine, or even the first time you swiped a credit card. You didn't know what to do. You just did it. You learned it. And then once you do it, it's like, it's like tying shoelaces. You don't think about it ever again. And sending Bitcoin is as easy as sending an email. It's just something you need to learn how to do, and then storing it and self-custodying it. So the beauty of self-custody is not only by owning Bitcoin, you get to boycott the Fed, but by owning it in self-custody, you get to boycott the custodian. So rather than making the bank more powerful, or an institution like BlackRock, a vital player in the proof of weapons network, more powerful, by you owning your own Bitcoin in self-custody, you get to boycott the custodians and the asset managers. Then you can move to, if you go through the wealth effect that everybody has historically. I can't give you financial advice. I can't promise the future, but I continue to do the same and invest every single month and own more Bitcoin than the previous month. You end up not needing to borrow. And by not borrowing, you boycott the bank. And by boycotting the bank, that is the grease of the engine of the proof of weapons network and the war machine. And then once you become wealthy, you might decide to buy your house. That's how it worked out for me. And I bought it outright without needing a mortgage at the time that was right for me. Then you can spend your money locally, and you can boycott the global institutions that are building the surveillance state. And you can be more conscious with your money rather than purchasing from a perpetrator of crime, genocide, wars, crimes against humanity. You can spend it locally on the countries that need support against the crimes against humanity. You can spend it locally on your supporting your local community, your local farmers, your local industry, your local up-and-coming, building systems, working in decentralized systems, investing in decentralized systems, spending within these decentralized systems, and community-based systems. And so this is why I encourage everybody to experiment and at least learn self-custody. Your first job is to get off zero Bitcoin, and then to get that Bitcoin in self-custody. And go through that journey, because it is the skill you will need in the future to have decentralized identity, decentralized artificial intelligence, decentralized social media, as well as decentralized money. And it's going to be a skill that you will need, particularly as we move to a world of taking away your freedom through central bank digital currencies, or taking away your job through programmable artificial intelligence. And taking away your data and identity to a point where you can actually store it just as you can store your money. And so what I want you to do is look at the debate. I was only one participant in that debate. I hope you enjoy the debate. It's people that come from different perspectives. And then we'll just give a quick AI summary for those that don't get to watch the whole thing. And then you can go into the debate and start thinking, what's right for you? But I wanted to give my advice up front, even if you stop here and go no further. So enjoy the debate. The debate is Bitcoin, custody, or self-custody. Let's move over to the AI summary now.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really big question. It's technical, sure, but also kind of philosophical.
Yeah.
Once you actually own Bitcoin, how do you store it?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to dive into this debate that flared up, I think it was July 1st, 2025. And we're using Simon Dixon's blog as a guide. He was right in the middle of it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because it really highlights this core tension, doesn't it? It's this battle between keeping Bitcoin pure to its original ideas and, well, making it practical for everyone to use.
Right.
But Dixon's first piece of advice, his constant advice, really, to you, the listener, is super simple. Just get off zero.
Meaning just own some Bitcoin, anything.
Exactly. Own any Bitcoin. And, the kicker is he's been saying for 14 years, just buy a bit more each month. Simple rule.
And that simple rule.
For anyone who's stuck with it for at least 4 years, Bitcoin has beaten, well, every other asset class. That's quite a track record.
It really is. Okay, so let's unpack the two main sides of this storage debate. First up, the argument for self-custody. People like Simon Dixon, Dustin Stockton.
Right. They see self-custody as, vital for the soul of Bitcoin.
The soul of Bitcoin. What does that mean in practice?
It comes down to those original revolutionary ideas, Money you can actually own, money you can spend without asking permission, and that fixed supply.
Okay, so the ownership part is key.
Absolutely. Because if you use a custodian, like an exchange or a bank, you just have an IOU. It's not really yours in the same way. You need their okay to spend it.
Which opens the door to censorship.
Precisely. Dixon even calls self-custody a way to boycott what he terms the proof of weapons network, basically bypassing the traditional financial system, the Fed, big players like BlackRock.
And Dustin Stockton had that really powerful story.
Oh, yeah. That was quite something.
He was apparently debanked, kicked out of 8 banks, he said, for political reasons, and he survived for 4 years with no bank account.
That's self-custodied Bitcoin.
That just makes it so real, doesn't it? It's not theory anymore. It shows why self-sovereignty matters, especially if you might face censorship like that.
It really underscores the point, but then there's the other side.
Right, the pragmatists, the ones focused on mass adoption.
Uh-huh. People like Joe Carlasare, Gary Cardone, their focus is bringing in the next billion Bitcoin users. And for them, that means it has to be easy, low friction.
No complex stuff.
Exactly. Carlasare basically called self-custody a usability nightmare. Seed phrases, hardware wallets. He thinks it just scares people off.
Those long lists of words can be intimidating.
Totally. He even brought up Hal Finney's prediction from way back in 2010, suggesting Bitcoin might just end up as a reserve currency for banks, not something everyone holds directly.
And Gary Cardone, he seemed pretty frustrated too.
Yeah, he shared his own bad experience trying to use hardware wallets, called them frustrating, and he criticized Bitcoin's marketing, calling it horrific for making newcomers feel dumb with that not your keys, not your Bitcoin purity test.
The classic line.
His point was, look, we need to make it easy to get trillions of dollars into Bitcoin. And things like ETFs, custodial solutions, they do that.
Okay, so we have these two strong, almost opposing views. Ideology versus practicality, security versus usability. How does Simon Dixon suggest you, the listener, navigate this? What's the takeaway?
Well, he concludes it's not really a binary choice, not strictly one or the other. It's more of a spectrum.
A spectrum.
And let's be honest, most people starting out, they'll take the easiest path, buying on a centralized exchange.
Which goes back to his first point.
Yeah.
Just get off zero. Don't let the complexity stop you from starting. Avoid that analysis paralysis.
Exactly. But here's where Dixon adds a crucial next step, something he thinks is really important for your journey.
Okay.
He believes once you own some Bitcoin, you shouldn't just stop there. He really urges everyone to buy a hardware wallet, take some Bitcoin off the exchange, and actually learn how to use it.
So it's not just about the security aspect.
Not entirely. He calls it experiential learning, learning by doing. And he thinks this skill, managing your own keys, your own digital assets, is going to be vital, especially with things like decentralized identity coming, AI, and, let's face it, a growing surveillance state.
Interesting perspective. Learning self-custody is a future-proofing skill.
Right. So ultimately, the right way for you to store your Bitcoin, it probably involves a mix. Diversification, it depends on your situation, taxes, inheritance plans, how comfortable you are with security.
So this deep dive really shows that storing Bitcoin is about balancing these big principles with, day-to-day reality.
Yeah. The key message seems to be, don't let the fear of self-custody keep you from starting. Get some Bitcoin first.
Get in the door.
But then don't let the convenience of just leaving it on an exchange stop you from learning what makes Bitcoin truly revolutionary. Learn how to be sovereign with at least some of it.
Get in the door, then understand the power. That makes sense. Which leaves a really important question for you to think about. As technology keeps changing, as society shifts, how will your own approach to managing your digital assets, your sovereignty, evolve? Something to mull over.
got a really cool group of people, Dustin, Gary, Joe, Simon. So first we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. Dustin, you can go first. You're on my right.
Thank you. Dustin Stockton, champion debater. Nobody wants none of this action. And very excited to be here. I come from the world of politics. I actually have been to more than 36 presidential debates where I was an advisor for somebody who was in the presidential debates, most famously with Newt Gingrich in his run in 2012.
All right. Good to have you here, Dustin. Gary, what brings you here?
Gary Cardone. Tonight I am representing the side of other, which is non-self-custody, and my partner is Joe Carlasare.
Okay, my intro. I'm Joseph Carlasare. I am a commercial litigator based out of Chicago. I have a national practice serving Bitcoin miners, offering regulatory advice towards Bitcoin companies and also the greater crypto complex. I also have a regular commercial litigation practice where I am barred in multiple states and represent people in high stakes bet the company type litigation. So your litigator on the panel, that's what I'm serving as today.
Okay. Simon?
Hey, everybody. I'm Simon Dixon. I've been involved in Bitcoin since 2011. Bought my first Bitcoin at $3. Spoke at the first Bitcoin conference. Wrote the first book to include Bitcoin. Invested in over 100 companies in the industry, from Coinbase, Kraken, Bitfinex, Bitstamp, and many others. And also run a regulated financial institution. So I've been on both sides, the cypherpunk movement, which is where I spend most of my time. But I also have to be an adult sometime when I'm dealing with executives from my company that need to custody Bitcoin and do adult things and engage with regulators and banks. So I understand both sides of the world, but ideologically, I come from the self-custody cypherpunk movement, and the benefits of that I'll be arguing.
Let's go. By the way, shout out to whoever called me out for my mic. Forgive me to switch my settings.
Cool. So we're going to dive right in. In the meantime, if you guys have questions that you want them to discuss, I'm reading all of them. So go ahead and do that. And we'll start off with self-custody first. So either Simon or Dustin can take the stage. You have 3 minutes. Is that right, Cheney? We decided 3 minutes?
Simon, I'm gonna give to your $3 Bitcoin and long-term experience to lead us out.
All right. Okay. So when I first spoke on Bitcoin in 2011, I was a monetary reformer, and it was us versus the banks. And we were a bunch of activists and cypherpunks that used to think about the freedom that we could get if we can transact outside the banking system. Once I understood Bitcoin and engaged with it, there was no choice but self-custody. You had to set up your own wallet. There was no real, you could go to an exchange and try and buy some Bitcoin, but I would buy it peer-to-peer from somebody. At that time, there was physical Bitcoin, paper wallets. And at that first conference was somebody, a lady that created Trezor, and made it easy for people to own Bitcoin in self-custody through a hardware device. The main thing that Bitcoin gave us and me at the time was 3 things: money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply. Now, most people want the financial benefit of money that has a fixed supply that allows you historically to beat inflation and to beat every single asset class. And so some people just stop there. But by self-custodying, you have the ability to own money without any kind of intermediary. And then once you own it, you can spend it peer-to-peer and send it to anybody at any scale, at any amount. And so I put to you that while it's great to beat every single asset class, beat inflation, beat the fund managers, and some people need to do that in a tax efficient way. And therefore, there's all sorts of incentives to hold it in custody. And some people don't want to go through the headache of learning how to self-custody. I believe you're missing two other vital parts. And that is that if you own it in a custody way, there will be an intermediary involved in every time you want to spend it. And although you might have a small amount of Bitcoin right now, as that value of that Bitcoin gets larger, there may be censorship. And historically, there is censorship because any centralized institution needs to comply with a bunch of rules and regulations before they allow you to actually transact. And if you want to do something that's completely legal, but the government or an institution may not be online with what you want to do, i.e. maybe you want to contribute to WikiLeaks to further freedom of speech, or maybe you want to give to a charitable organization, and maybe that charitable organization is in a sensitive country and therefore they just don't allow you to transact. When you want to do those perfectly legal things, you have to own it in self-custody. The other thing is that the original cypherpunk movement was that if you look at the world right now, there is a big, beautiful bill. And in that big, beautiful bill...
We're running out of time.
Okay.
You want to finish up your last point?
Yeah, this will be the last point. In that big, beautiful bill, there is a surveillance state built into that big, beautiful bill through technology like Palantir. And in that technology like Palantir, when combined with stable coins, is every reason why they are moving to a technocracy, and all the reasons why you want to own your own money and be able to spend your money. And people are going to realize that as we progress.
So we have some comments coming in. Dr. Mark, surreal. So many people still don't get self-storage. There's a lot of emotion going on in the comments. I think we decided to do a rebuttal of 1 minute from the other side. And then we go to the other side with 3 minutes. Is that right? Just to comment on what Simon said so far.
Wait, so I'm commenting on what Simon said for a minute?
We don't know exactly. I don't know exactly how you guys want to do this.
But the rebuttal should be 3 minutes. They should get equal time to respond.
What? Dustin, you and Simon are on the same team.
No,
yeah. Joe, you're going to rebut it.
Yeah, we're going to rebut this. Are we ready to go? Can I just fire away?
This is the part where the audience gets to see how you figure out things.
We'll start the clock. Okay, first off, the number one priority for Bitcoin in this time and space should be onboarding new people. It should be ease of use. It should be low friction. It should be user-friendly exchanges. It should be ways to get people on board to Bitcoin. You can quote as much as you want the history of the early cyberpunk movement where you had tens of thousands of people holding Bitcoin. That's a science project. That's not global finance. That's not the heart of the financial system. You need to bring in 1 billion users, okay? And the only way to do that is to slowly, incrementally move them towards Bitcoin in a way that they're comfortable, and that is through custodied solutions. Now, that does not in any way undermine what Simon's talking about. You have the ability to withdraw Bitcoin at your leisure, at your convenience, if you get to the point. But we shouldn't let this artificially high bar of self-custody be prohibitive to prevent people from moving in. And I will quote someone who's been in Bitcoin longer than Simon, Hal Finney. I'm quoting a post that he put out there back in 2010, Gary. He said the following: I believe this will be the ultimate fate of Bitcoin, to be high-powered money that serves as a reserve currency for banks, institutions to hold. Most Bitcoin transactions will occur between banks, between entities, not peer-to-peer, not in self-custody. This is Hal Finney, okay? And he said Bitcoin transactions by private individuals will be rare. Bold and underline, audience. Bold and underline that it's a rare occurrence we will have. Only the super rich, super wealthy early Bitcoiners like Simon in a world like we're moving to will be able to do the on-chain transactions. That's just a practical aspect of the technology. So if you're going to just ignore this, I think you're just ignoring modern reality. We know that the self-custody issues deters people. So why are you advocating for something that's going to be a roadblock and an impediment and get people just give up in frustration? I mean, we know that people hate the experience of crypto. They get hacked, they lose their money, they get deterred, they say this is garbage. I want a hotline where I can call somebody. And to pose this usability nightmare on people. That's what you're advocating for, Simon, a usability nightmare where they have to navigate wallets and USB drives and try to save their passwords and make sure, yes, we can all do it. But the majority of the population isn't sophisticated, I think, as most people on this call. We need to get them on the rails. We need to get them comfortable, and we need to lower barriers. And I'll just note one thing. Imagine if you were to say, well, you have to start driving a car, and you have to do it without driver's ed. You have to do it without, weeks of training. You just have to go. And by the way, if you end up killing yourself or killing other people, It's just the way it is. You have to take personal responsibility for it. I know people by name who have lost millions of dollars, their entire life savings, because they were messing with self-custody and they did not know what they're doing. And you can retort as much as you want that that's just private personal responsibility. That's just the way it works. That's just how people have to grow accustomed to. But that sucks if you ruin their lives because they were moving towards something too quickly. You would never put a kid out there on a bike without training wheels. They would fall down and smash their face. You want to move them incrementally to the future you want. I yield the balance of my time. Can't hear anybody. I can't hear anybody.
Well,
I hear lips
it's
moving.
dead silence from the other group, my friend, because it should be. Dustin?
No, so I love how as Bitcoin is growing, we're starting to sound more and more like traditional finance and the elitists who look down their nose at everybody who couldn't possibly figure out how to self-custody and take personal responsibility. The importance of what Simon laid out in the original vision of Bitcoin and what makes it a revolution isn't just getting as many people on board as we can possibly get. It's getting them on board and teaching them what monetary policy is. And for me personally, having been debanked for political reasons, never have been charged with crime, never indicted, just completely added to the politically exposed persons list, which prevented me from having a bank account, not at one institution, but basically all financial institutions. The importance of people understanding and learning what it means to cut out the banks and the people, right? When we talk about adding that layer in between, why should I have to allow somebody, if I want to do a business deal with Gary, why do I need to allow somebody in the custodial position who actually has control of saying yes or no, we can do the transaction that we want to do between each other? And you don't get that revolutionary part of Bitcoin unless you are willing to take personal responsibility and learn to own your own money, not your keys, not your crypto. And so if you want to trust it to the banks and do whatever you want to do that way, the problem is what we are sacrificing in order to speed up and rush the adoption is what made Bitcoin the revolution in the beginning, which is the underlying principles of personal responsibility, owning your own money, and limited supply. As a result of those principles, we're watching the monetary policy shift dramatically, and people understand it. Just giving it away so that it's easier for people, maybe we don't need to make it easier for people. Maybe people need to learn why Bitcoin's a revolution.
Dana, is this now up to me? What, I have 1 minute or 3 minutes?
You have 3 minutes now, unless you guys want to chime in. We don't like the timing.
I don't think I need 3 minutes based on this flimsy response from the opposition. I think my friend JC just like crushed it. The things he left out, however, just some clear facts. One, my own personal experience was the first, I think, I don't know, maybe first hour of meeting Bitcoiners, I heard a word I'd never heard in my life, or 2 words, seed phrase. And that was about $800 Bitcoin. And that's cost me like a tremendous amount of fucking money. And then in 2020, I heard that even though I held a lot of Bitcoin, because I was holding it at an exchange, I was not a good Bitcoiner. I spent about, I don't know, a week playing around with a ledger, and it wasn't, I'm not talking bad about ledger, just the wallet. It's a lot. And it's not that I'm stupid. One, I have never, ever had to do this in my entire life with any other asset. And I don't do it with my other assets. So you were actually trying to train me to do something that's like so foreign. And what it did was it actually slowed me down coming in. And I think this is the point Joe made. If you're trying to promote something, look, Bitcoin has had a massive problem. This is one of the reasons I'm so bullish, that because it's decentralized, it has no central messaging center. It has no central marketing department, and the marketing's been horrific. If you don't, marketing is everything, right? You have to get the message to the people that are going to come into this space, unless you just want it to be cyberpunks. And if you're just going to be a cyberpunk world, you're going to be at $300,000, but you're not going to be a major market. This information, see, I love doing these debates because we're going to learn stuff. What Joe read to me, if it's true about Hal Finney, that's big data, okay? That's really big data, because you have the other side, the guys that are alive today going, hey, look, if you don't do peer-to-peer, it's a failure. I don't think it is a failure today. There's not massive amounts of peer-to-peer, but there is a lot of scaling occurring. And the way this works, okay, is that you're not possibly going to lose more than 4 million Bitcoin through Coinbase. It's very hard for me to imagine that you're going to, with the self-custody or the third-party custodian solutions we have today, that 4 million coins are going to go missing. And this was basically a misunderstanding of what the tools were and the value of the product they were trying to store. And I think at $100,000, people are going to think this through very, very carefully. Friction is not needed to onboard billions and trillions of dollars. We don't need that. Thank you.
You got on mute, Dana.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me, by the way? Is my mic okay?
Yeah, now you're good.
Okay, so how do you guys want to do this now? Do we want to go back and rebuttal with the shorter timers, or what's the structure we like?
Yeah, I think shorter comments are better. Because then we can actually respond, because there's a lot said in 3 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go with the other team now. One of you can pick who for 2 minutes then, or 1 minute.
Yeah, I think 1 minute's probably awesome.
Okay, who wants to take it?
Okay, so while you may never have self-custody, the ability, just ordering a Trezor wallet or a Ledger wallet, it is an experience and an education in itself, because in the future, you're going to need to own your own identity. Now you can own your own money. You're going to need to probably own your own artificial intelligence, and you're probably going to be able to engage in a financial system that works without intermediaries. As we move to an artificial intelligence world, the ability to actually not trust upon a custodian, where there are agents that are being built, that's probably going to hack most centralized companies into the future. The thing that you can do to protect yourself is actually learn key management. And now it may be an intimidating exercise to do that, but it's actually way less intimidating than it actually makes. You can watch a YouTube video. You can go and just do the experience. Look, buy your Bitcoin however you want. Leave it on the exchange. But at the same time, make sure you go through the experience of self-custodying, because I know somebody that lost 25,000 Bitcoin in Bitcoinica. I know tens of thousands of people that lost money in Mt. Gox. I know lots of people that were on the victim of 119,000 Bitcoin that was stolen from Bitfinex. I also know lots of people. I spent 2 years of my life just because I entrusted some Bitcoin.
Hey, I thought they had a minute. I didn't think they had an hour. Dana,
okay,
I don't know. I can't see the timer. All right, so you're off. You're off. Simon's done.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Simon should lose some points for that.
No, we'll go.
No, it's my fault. Okay, so now Joe gets a minute.
Yeah. So Dustin said, why do I need somebody to have custodial positions and custodial solutions? That's not the question. The question isn't why you need it. The question is, how do you onboard 1 billion users? Okay. So they're conflating this. And even Simon said just a minute ago, he said, well, you may never have a self-custody solution. Exactly. Because some people, I think, frankly, they don't need it. Okay. They can obviously have that opportunity. And that's the core of the thesis. That's the opportunity you have there. But, if a user is truly afraid, if they're afraid that they're going to be silenced because they're a political dissident, or they're going to be sanctioned, or whatever reason by the government, you have that option. That's the whole point. And the majority of people, they're not making Bitcoin transactions. They're not paying for things. They're holding on for number go up right now. And that's the key. We need to get Bitcoin substantially higher with a billion new users if we're going to move to a system where we have political protection. And what this all boils down to, ladies and gentlemen, it's very simple. You have to have pragmatism over purism. If you have pragmatism over purism, you can win the adoption debate. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what Gary and I believe. And we shouldn't be tied to these ideological views.
All right, Rob. Wow, I had 40 Bitcoin hacked out of my blockchain wallet in January. That's a recent comment. Okay, Dustin.
Yeah. So I mean, when I hear Gary and the other side laying out this idea that somehow, right? These are people I hear all the time talk about how Bitcoin is a completely unique asset, that it's absolutely different than anything that's ever come before it, and yet trying to strip away the things that made it an absolutely unique asset in the beginning, right? Which is the reason that Bitcoin has been able to build itself to this point where we're getting the kind of adoption that we're getting across the board, is specifically because it answered very specific problems that the monetary policy cut people like me out from being able to participate, that it limited the total amount of supply. And if you reject the baseline things, that the whole reason that it was created and everybody up until this point adopted it in order to just streamline and speed up the amount of adoption you want to get, you're leaving behind the entire point of why we're here in the first place.
So you're against ETFs? We never should have launched ETFs and brought in tens of billions of capital. That's just a bad move because no
ETFs.
All right.
What about lending? What about lending, Dustin? If I can't lend. I hear people going, "Hey, look, I've got 100 Bitcoin in my self custody, and I want to borrow against it," but they want to keep it. It's like, bro, that's just not happening. Okay, it's called the best collateral in the world for a reason. But it has to sit in my hands or in someone's hands that I actually trust or have some kind of legal agreement with. The other thing is, guys, I can't possibly do all of what I'm trying to do in Bitcoin. I came from the legacy world. I'm getting
some flack for not keeping you guys in check. Gary.
Yeah, am I too long?
Gary, you have 1 minute. Go, Cheney.
Oh,
yep.
I just was talking. Look, I think Dustin's saying that he hears all these people talking about how great Bitcoin is, but and pointing to self-custody. Self-custody is one of at least 12 characteristics that I find extremely, extremely interesting and valuable for Bitcoin. It does not mean it's the penultimate, it's the best, it's the most important to me. In fact, I think if you meet with families that are much wealthier than me, you will find that they have very little interest right now in self-custody. They're wanting to understand the complex. They don't need to understand the seed phrase, and I just want to get trillions of dollars in here as fast as possible. And low friction is the right way to do it. I actually think once we get them in the door and you give them a taste of this, okay, whether it comes through the ETF or it comes through MicroStrategy, I don't really care how it happens. What I care about is that they start thinking about more Bitcoin, and that, I think, leads to long-term self-custody.
The freedom to choose is the ultimate freedom, right? So the ability to choose, and you guys don't want to give them the option. You want to have this dogma. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in a
more open discussion right now. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we should free for all it.
Yeah.
So personally, I would never say something shouldn't exist because I believe in a free market and then people should choose their solution. But I would like to advocate for people to understand that if you own a share in a Bitcoin company, you do not own any Bitcoin. If you own a Bitcoin ETF, you have an IOU that tracks the price of Bitcoin, but you don't own any Bitcoin. If you have Bitcoin on an exchange, you have an IOU from an exchange and you don't have any Bitcoin. The true freedom, the true promise of what Bitcoin offers you is when you actually engage in owning your Bitcoin, transacting with your Bitcoin, and experiencing what it is like to actually own Bitcoin. So while you might want to do all those things and it's a free market, I'd encourage everybody to try self-custody, get it set up, and realize I don't think you'll go back for the majority of your Bitcoin unless there's some other tax reason or reason that you have to own it through some kind of exotic structure.
I hear you encouraging people to try that, but what is realistic? What do you think is realistic the next 10 years of Bitcoin? Do you think it's more custody Bitcoin than self-custody or not?
I think the vast majority do the lazy solution and are going to go through centralized parties. And then one day they're going to learn why that wasn't the best move. And then they're probably going to end up in self-custody at the end of it. But the vast majority won't be self-custody.
But Simon, in fairness, okay, and if I'm out of order here, you guys can knock me down, but I have never seen any of your financials, not any three of your financials. I would bet a large sum of money you have money in the legacy system. I've heard you publicly say that you own shares in Circle. So like you're in the legacy system. It's kind of like, I think sometimes you guys are a little hypocritical because it's like you either get out of the complete system or you hold your hand up and go, dude, I own shares in Circle. I mean, that is part of the system, and not to access that market, you would be a much poorer man today.
Well,
now you would have been richer had you bought Bitcoin and just held on to it. But you can't deny that there are other instruments around in the world. I don't see 8 billion people. I think wallet self-custody is the big loser once the ETF's launched. If we look at winners and losers, that market is going to really struggle for mass adoption on Bitcoin. That you may get them through the tokens, but I think Bitcoin, and quite frankly, I don't know why you would want anyone spending money from Bitcoin into a potato chip. Dude, it makes no sense.
Well, listen, I see everybody in the debates, like Glazing Joe, right? Like commercial lawyer in here laying it out. But I just want you guys to notice, right, how the other team has managed to say, oh, well, we are kind of taking both sides because we're not really going to say that self-custody shouldn't be an option. We're going to say, we want to onboard people first. And yet when we do the same thing, if we say, we want to push people into no one here disagrees that most people are going to take the path of least resistance.
They just conceded, right? Gary. They just conceded.
No, you guys have said the entire debate that you want the option to be available because there is no argument. If you have been censored, the thing that I've used to onboard people for years is that if you are politically outspoken in Canada with the trucker convoy, if you are politically outspoken in the United States, if you're organizing protests against the government, if you are speaking out against any of the hot button issues, you better have some Bitcoin and it better be self-custody.
That's not going to fix the problem, Dustin. I mean, you know this as well as anybody. Just because you have access to your Bitcoin doesn't mean you can't then be, sanctioned in a number of different ways. They could show up on your house at 3 a.m, be knocking on your door. They could serve you with a warrant. They could throw you in a cage, right? Like the fact that you got great, have fun playing with your Bitcoins when you're under arrest and being prosecuted. I mean, how does that protect a dissident?
Well, no, I can tell you in my case, it absolutely did, right? When the banks handed all of my banks, 8 different banks handed me a piece of paper that said, right, and you will get your money back in 30 to 90 days, 2 months before the 2020 election. If I didn't have access to Bitcoin, like off book, like how was I supposed to pay my bill? The point was that I wasn't supposed to be able to.
It's marginally better than not having access to banking services, right? But if you become a big enough target, Bitcoin's not going to be their attack vector. You know this. It's a much bigger attack vector. They'll just take you. Bitcoin might not be might be unconfiscatable, but you're not. You can be confiscated.
Hey, let's try this question. Then let's just do it. Just a little pivot here. Let's say a guy's got a lot of money, okay, and he's got stocks, he's got MicroStrategy, he owns the complex of miners, he's got ETFs, and he's got a lot of Bitcoin in custody and in self-custody. What are you guys saying? That he needs to carry all his, because Dustin, you needed it enough for the emergency. Okay, I own a lot of firearms. Over the years, I've just collected a ton of them. I don't carry, if I go to Mexico, I'm not carrying every weapon I have or all my cash or all my gold or all my Bitcoin. Why would I package everything up in one thing? That for me is the most difficult thing, because you guys talk about storing it all. How do you get around that? Is there any middle ground?
I don't think anybody here is advocating to store all of your funds in self-custody, right? The point is just abandoning self-custody as one of the things that...
If that's true, then you should allow people to come in and board them as fast as possible, even if it's on fucking Robinhood.
100%.
Smash them into their Coinbase, ETF, whatever is the easiest thing to do, because then it makes our life easy. All we have to do is ask someone, hey, you want my advice on Bitcoin? Show me your financial report. I'll go through all their equities and all their bonds and go, dude, you made 10% over the last 10 years. You paid this many fees out, and this is what Bitcoin would have done. I can convert people so fucking fast.
By the way, Gary, if you convert that many people that quickly, you have an adjacent benefit. You have the benefit of getting millions of more people that have wealth, that have status in society, that can run for office, that can protect dissidents, that can do, have positive force in society. So why wouldn't you want to say, okay, this is what we need to do. This is the path it needs to take to get to the end result of more, freedom and liberty in society.
I agree. I think we'd be better off educating the people that know so much about wallets to take some of that money that they have in the wallets and actually spend shitloads of time and money on lobbying to ensure that our self-custody rights are sacred. Okay, sacred. And I think that is a massive deal, but it should be an option for me.
Yeah, so this week alone, I just got a letter from HSBC, a bank that was set up literally to do drug dealing for the British Empire, that told me that they won't allow me to continue having my bank account. If I had a massive chunk of Bitcoin in there, I'd be really petrified around what that bank would be doing with that Bitcoin. You talked about Circle. So I invested in a company, and that company was a Bitcoin company, ended up a stable coin company. And now I've got these shares that ended up private equity, now has gone to public equity. And I just want Bitcoin at the end of it. So now I've got to go to my broker and say, in 180 days after a lock-in, can you sell some of my shares? And they'll say, yep, sure, I'll sell those for dollars. Now I've got millions of dollars sat in a brokerage account, and I've got to try and get it into a bank account so I can then get it into an exchange so that I can then buy Bitcoin. In order to do that, it will take probably most of my accounts getting shut down. It will take 1 year on a round trip because I don't live, within US or integrated into the US system. I've literally, within my company, had to hire someone full time just to work on trying to get money in and out of the banking system.
Why? Why do you have so many bank accounts? I thought you're all cold storage.
Because they keep getting shut down. I've had 50 bank accounts.
Well, why do you need it? Why don't you just do Bitcoin only? Why don't you do Bitcoin and cold storage only, Simon? Why don't you just? Why do you have all these bank accounts?
Yes, Simon.
Because
why are you still in the system? Are you an enemy of Bitcoin?
Yeah. So when I moved to Hong Kong, I did actually do Bitcoin debit card, and I earned all my money through mining. Self custody would come onto the Bitcoin debit card. And because you couldn't actually spend Bitcoin in Hong Kong, I used my Bitcoin debit card. But if I actually stored,
why can't you spend money in the bank? Why can't you spend Bitcoin in Hong Kong?
Because most of the shops don't accept Bitcoin for spending. So you have to go through the legacy system.
So how would that help Dustin's situation when he gets censored in Hong Kong as a dissident? If they won't accept it,
because if you hold your Bitcoin in self custody, you got the majority of your wealth in self custody. You can then take the bits that you need in order to use the legacy rails, and you can manage your life through that. But if I had my full stack of Bitcoin in my brokerage account or with my bank right now, I'd be absolutely petrified having that amount of wealth with a bank outside of my control, because my whole experience over the last 15 years as somebody perfectly legitimate that has followed every law and regulation that I could possibly follow, but just because I've been involved in Bitcoin and had significant wealth in Bitcoin, I've managed to save myself by only entrusting with the bank the minimum amount that I need in order to spend that money and manage certain financial affairs. I would be petrified having my wealth with either a broker or in an exchange or any of these providers, because I've experienced exactly what they do when you have wealth.
And the idea that to be in support of self-custody and be arguing our side, we have to somehow withdraw from the whole the economy as a whole, and like we're not living up to the full standard. Again, I'm not.
No, that's not the idea. It's hypocritical. It's hypocritical to tell new people that they can't use custodial solutions, that they need to be 100%, self-custody, or they need to start with self-custody when you yourself are not using whole self-custody. You're using banking rails.
No one's saying they shouldn't be able to use.
There are many maxes.
But it does come across this way, okay? Like it comes across. Listen, I know a story of a guy like me that came into this space 3-4 years ago, and what he heard was the only valuable thing was self-custody. And he goes and does that, smashes $50 million on, and 1 week later has lost the fucking password. Okay, now, like, we don't want that to happen. I do not want any of my friends losing Bitcoin. And I don't want any of my friends having to pay $10,000 more for Bitcoin. I want them in the door. And then once they get some wins, dude, it's so easy. It's like dating someone. If a girl doesn't like you, it's going to be hard to make to the next step. I mean, you got to throw something out here that get them in the door. And I hear this shit all the time, man. Like, I'm not the comments. Oh, Gary's not a good Bitcoiner. Like I want $1 trillion. I think I can bring $1 trillion into Bitcoin.
Well, if everybody's going to buy Bitcoin through an exchange, like most people are going to start with a centralized on-ramp. We're just talking about storage. And so if your choices that you have, you either find a qualified custodian that's set up specifically for custody, or you use an exchange, which has been disaster for many, or you come in through some kind of ETF structure, in which case you don't own Bitcoin. And once you bought your Bitcoin, I believe every single person should buy a hardware wallet, take some of that Bitcoin off an exchange and learn how to use it in self-custody. But you're going to still have to go through one of these on-ramps in order to buy Bitcoin in the first place. And so it's just a question of where do you store it? And I think everybody should diversify their storage. And I think for me, if you end up with significant wealth, I just don't trust banks and financial institutions to store that wealth for me. And I don't trust exchanges to not get hacked when you create these large centralized honeypots.
I also, you started out, Simon, like making the case for us, like reminding people that the Big Brother surveillance state is growing in ways that are mind-boggling, right? The ability of AI to be able to process large data sets and do pattern recognition. We are not far away from them using, right? We've watched so many examples of debanking being used as a weapon by governments all over the world. One of the things that we absolutely have to protect is the idea of self-custody. It's a no-brainer.
But the self-custody doesn't solve the problem, because if you have $100,000 in Bitcoin, have you ever tried to sell that? I mean, I actually have, by the way, and it's almost impossible without a KYC exchange. So when you deposit and you've got that subpoena account from you, Dustin, because they're tracking your funds and closing your bank accounts, when that deposit hits Coinbase, when you deposit that Bitcoin, you think you're going to get cash out? You don't think that's going to hit your Coinbase account as well? You're not going to be able to withdraw that. Your Bitcoin's gone as soon as you try to liquidate it.
Well, I will say there are ways to do it. Maybe
I was just going to say, I'm sure Dustin has one.
And to be honest, it took me quite a long time to figure out and to work a system to be able to exist without a bank account.
I get it. But
I went 4 years without being allowed to have a bank account. 4 years. And through that time, I actually onboarded crap tons of people through exactly what you guys are talking about. I using Cash App and Venmo now, I can send people Bitcoin. Now, I'm not demanding that they begin by self-custodying, but I'm able to exist and serve as somebody who's an onboard point while also figuring out a system because of self-custody specifically. It's not something that we can just discard and be able to keep Bitcoin is what Bitcoin is and just discard self-custody and say, let's just turn it over to Bitcoin.
No, but no one's saying that. That's a straw man argument. No one's saying discard it because it will always be there. It's part of the base layer protocol. We can always agree on that, right? It will always be an option unless it becomes uneconomical to transact on chain. You'll always be able to take self-custody. What we're talking about is the vast majority of people. We're not talking about people in the resistance like you, Dustin, who has to, fight against the man. Like that's not what we're talking about. Your average Joe who is trying to figure this thing out. And there was a comment it was very telling. It says, I have Joshua Bryant. He says, I have a family member that wants Bitcoin, but believes he needs self-custody. He's too scared or too lazy to store it. But either way, he still doesn't own Bitcoin due to that thought process. This is exactly what we're talking about, guys.
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of different ways of looking at this. But by the way, you talked about engaging in the political process and lobby and various other things. Try having your Bitcoin in Coinbase and then sending it to a politician. Immediately, you'll be told that you're a politically exposed person and your account will be shut down. And you'll have to figure out what to do with that Bitcoin. At that point, you need to figure out self-custody or you need to send it to another exchange. As soon as you send it to another exchange, it will come with a new rule saying travel rule, where it needs to you need to actually declare all the different bits of information on what you're doing with your money. By the time you're finished with all of that paperwork, you'll probably be in a situation where every account is getting shut down and you have to figure out self-custody anyway.
I have no more to say. I think we have brought this to a point where it's very easy. To me, this is what I hear. I hear this is a decision for a family to make. I'm a single dad. Like nothing, I'm not guaranteed to wake up tomorrow morning. Okay, so it would be good for my kids if I had a lawyer who, when I die, he knows how to handle everything. And me sharing my seed phrase with my lawyer already opens up Pandora's box. I mean, there's just so many different issues here. I'm going to pause my comments because I think that this is about getting people in the door and then we educate them and then they decide how they self-custody or custody outside the self-custody solution for the best in their family or company.
Let's make it real simple. Okay, guys, when we have all been in spaces where somebody works up the courage to get on stage and they say, I want to figure out this Bitcoin thing. I want to figure out how do I do it? How do I get on board? And what you hear is, well, you need to buy it from a non-KYC exchange and then use self-custody and then don't buy this ETF. Make sure you don't buy it on Robinhood because you can't withdraw. I've heard this for 7-8 years now. We need to say buy it through any means necessary. Okay. And then once you get your feet wet, buy some more and then buy some more. And then down the line, when you realize what an amazing asset this is, then move to self-custody. But getting your feet wet is critical. And we should, as a community of Bitcoiners, not discourage people simply because it's not ideal at the outset, because it's not perfect cold storage custody that's non-KYC. And I've heard that for too many years. And that's what it's an impediment to adoption.
I've definitely lived that as well. Like what you've just explained, which is there's no doubt that when we were onboarding people, we had a messaging problem. The self-custody is also particularly unique because everybody has a different system that works for them and that reflects their level of desired security, right? And that has led to I agree with you. I can't argue that I've watched people who have been turned off from absolutely adopting right away. But I think that's gotten stronger and stronger as we come along. And I think what we've actually come to with this panel is where we started as a debate, everybody agrees that you should get Bitcoin and then you should learn about self-custody and put some of it aside in self-custody because that's part of the magic of what Bitcoin offers. I can walk across a border. I can, with just words that are in my head, I'm able to take my wealth with me. And I think we're all in agreement that self-custody needs to remain. I don't think either of us are maxis on either side of this. But to me, the most important thing is that we just don't sacrifice right? That it's not something that just gets shoved way to the side, because it's one of the things that it's one of those underlying fundamentals that makes this a revolution, that makes this something different than every other asset that's come before it.
Well said.
Yeah, I'll summarize as well. Obviously, we were fighting for the self-custody debate. I think Joe's exactly right. You need to onboard as fast as possible. You need to get Bitcoin. You need to get off 0 Bitcoin. That will involve going to an exchange. Some people will do it via an ETF simply because they've got a pension structure and there's a tax efficient way of doing it. If that's not a consideration, I'd really encourage people to actually try and get Bitcoin rather than an ETF of Bitcoin. But I understand why some people would do that. But once you're in an exchange, I think you should treat it as if it was going to be worth a lot in the future. And personally, I do not entrust millions and millions of dollars worth of value with exchanges or with custodians or with centralized parties. So I'd encourage people to try and put some of that into self-custody, experience it. And I'd also agree with Gary that you should probably be hedging. If you lose your key, you should think about, well, what do I do in another situation? And there is inheritance consideration. So all of this comes into the actual equation in the end. What I wouldn't want anyone to do is not actually try and experience self-custody and end up with the majority of their wealth or a large portion of their wealth in self-custody, as well as all the other hedges.
Yeah, that's well said.
Okay, so really, it sounds like this came down to a question of trust. Do you trust yourself with your keys or regulated institution? And then also, what time of life are you in? And how comfortable are you? Beginning, middle, and maybe the solution for everyone is a little bit different based on where they are in their life. I mean, do you guys all want to go around and say, in an ideal world, make a case for what you would do in a situation? You can give yourself as an example or somebody else. Okay, this is my, portfolio percentage-wise, because I get a lot of questions like, do you think we should diversify into ETF? A lot of questions around like that. And then some people are like, no, I'm all full storage, cold storage. That's it. What do you guys?
I don't mind taking that on. Listen, I think everybody here would tell you, get Bitcoin first and then figure it out from there. Right. And the other thing is, for those of us who have been here a long time, we're like, the space has evolved and adapted in so many positive ways that like the risk that we had of going to like brand new startup exchanges where we didn't really know what the backing it was, like there's a lot of scar tissue for people who've been in the space for a long time. And one of the benefits of like this widespread adoption, the other thing, but just start by getting Bitcoin. But I will say this, in the world that we are coming into, if you have ideas, if you have opinions and you like to express those, you should have some Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should probably understand like how to off-ramp it and use it. But like I said, the cool thing is we're in a world now, like when I first had to figure out the system, like how I was going to do stuff, I couldn't just Cash App like my Uber driver Bitcoin in order to like tip him. I couldn't Cash App somebody when I was like to settle a bill at the bar on Venmo. And all of that's become available now in ways that it's amazing to see. Get Bitcoin, but take the time to figure out and do self-custody. And like everything else, do it away. Listen, I've watched lots of people screw up their seed phrases and screw it up in all kinds of crazy ways. So make sure that whatever, like you take it as seriously as the amount of money you're putting into it.
I'll just say very briefly, you don't want to be scared about self-custody and let that deter you, okay? You have to just get your feet wet, get in the door. And then once you do that, I think in terms of the security profile, I can tell you my security profile has evolved over time from since I first bought Bitcoin. I won't even go into it now, but I can tell you if you showed up in my house, even though I have self-custody, it's not real self-custody because I can't do anything. I'd have to go to multiple different locations to activate anything, and there's no way you can get access to my Bitcoin. And I think that's a similar model people should take. You should constantly reevaluate your security. If you start out as a person very modest means and you get really very wealthy, well off, right? You have to reevaluate your whole security profile. That happens to everything. It's not just the Bitcoin issue. That's an issue for everybody. So I think as your position in Bitcoin grows, you need to constantly be thinking about these things, thinking about the best approach for you, whether it's a 50-50, a one-third split between custody solutions and non-custody and other options. I just think you can't be binary. And we should not speak in binary ways with newbies. That's just not helpful. So unfortunately, I have to jump, folks, but this was a ton of pleasure. It was a great pleasure.
Joe, I appreciate you so much helping me out. Joe, you guys all followed Joe. Awesome. He bounced in at the last minute. I gave him 30 minutes of notice. We forgot to invite you, Joe. So thank you very much, buddy.
Take care.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye, Joe.
So, guys, why don't we just wrap up like this? What did y'all? I would like to know from and Simon, if you're tired and got to get out of here. What did you like about this? I think we saw many of the questions in the audience. What did you like? What do you think we need to clean up? Any input? And maybe even from the audience. And the topics. We want topics from the audience. We'll do this every Tuesday, and the format will get better and better. So you guys just be patient with us. But so you guys send us in all the topics. If somebody said, hey, this is a fresh, we're just ginning this thing in. Simon, any comments on what we could do better?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, I think we all kind of agreed with each other, but we were arguing because we were taking our position. But I think in the end, diversification is actually the right answer. And so, self-custody, we tried to give the arguments for self-custody, but I totally understand why someone ends up with an ETF and why someone ends up with a custody solution as well, and why you're going to end up using an exchange. And so the end answer is that. And so it's a bit difficult to argue for something when you also agree with the opposition, but we just wanted to give the optimum argument. But there are a lot of things to consider, and there is no real generic advice, because at the end of the day, this is there's tax involved, there's inheritance planning involved, there's ransom, personal security, artificial. These are all really major questions. But what I don't want anyone to do is not analysis paralysis, where you end up missing Bitcoin because you were trying to do everything perfectly. The first thing is to just get exposure to Bitcoin, and then I think everyone else agrees. Figure it out from there, and we'll continue doing debates, but there's no real generic advice here because everyone's in a different position.
Yeah,
and I'll say this: it's one of the other amazing things of like where we are now versus even where we were 5 years ago. The body of content that you can consume to take yourself along, like your personal security journey, and like how, right, like financial, economic, secure, like all of these different factors. The cool thing is, and the thing I love about Bitcoin is it's taught people about economy and money and monetary policy and what it actually means. And now we have this this library of just amazing content to refer to and go back to and to build off of. And so if you're just getting started, get started. But you're going to find somebody who's going to be able to entertain you while you learn about all this stuff.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dana. What did you like or not like?
I just was going through the comments. People seem pretty happy about it. And I'm putting a poll up, right, for who won the debate. But it's kind of come to a conclusion. So what can we do a poll about? Because everyone's in agreement.
Well, I don't think there's a right answer. I think the right answer is on board, man. Stop blocking people from getting into Bitcoin. You don't know what their position is. Okay? Like, just fucking buy it any way you can, dude. If you can buy it at 7-Eleven, go fucking buy it. I mean, here's Coinbase, here's Fidelity. I ask people, show me your accounts. And they will. They'll show me their accounts. Oh, Fidelity, you're invested in Philip Morris, dude. It's made 3% for 8 years. And like, how about if I guarantee you the 3% plus another 100 basis points for the next 10 years and get into Bitcoin, and I'll share another 10% on the Bitcoin with you. I could turn this into a business, dude. For all my family members, oh, you don't want to do it? Shit, you got 300 grand sitting in Philip Morris. I'll pay you 4% instead of the 3% you're getting. You'll never see below $40, and I'll give you 10% of the upside on the Bitcoin. So they have a put. See, this is why I think the self-custody and custody, I love these two worlds. Like, if you get smart about this, you can arbitrage the shit out of these two worlds, man. Like, think about it. My sister trusts me more than she trusts Bank of America, guarantee you. So, hey, sis, you got 300 grand sitting in Philip Morris, give it to me, dude. Or Bank of America, you're making 4%, I'll pay you 5%. And you know, guys, what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to go buy Bitcoin. There's billions of dollars sitting around with people. People say, I can't convince my dad to do it. I can offer him a put, dude. Guarantee him. So
bit blocking. That's what Dr. Mark wrote. I'm going to use that phrase.
But listen, how's the format? I thought the 3 minutes is too much. I think you can do 2 minutes, bang, bang, bang. Okay. Because we might be able to get 2 debates in here. An hour for running a debate's too long.
Yeah, I think we need to do two topics, right? With the long intro too, where we were figuring out but if we had 2 predetermined topics, we could absolutely knock 2 out in an hour.
That's right. And look,
I think we should do a debate that's more controversial, like where Joe and I would sit on complete opposite sides, like around the Fed or something and Bitcoin. No. I think that was very tame because we kind of are all on a similar team, but we should do something that's way more polarizing.
Well, this was much better than last week.
Topic, Simon. What do you got?
Last week I took on Team Solana against. I let them beat me up, Simon.
I'd like to
debate Solana against Bitcoin. Let's go.
I'd like to debate Joe on whether the dollar is a Ponzi scheme. That's a good debate.
Hey, send us in a list, buddy.
Yeah.
Let's put it in the comments. Yeah, it's in the comments for sure.
But I also want to leave everyone just before I go. Something that I did that I try to make sure everybody's imparted with this message is that if all you do is one thing, no matter what your financial position is, no matter what is right for you in terms of percentages, own more Bitcoin this month than the previous month. Bang. And do that every month for 4 years, you'll never go back.
Yeah, Dana.
Preach.
You hear that? He's preaching to you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Simon, buddy, Simon, thank you. Go to bed. Thank you very much. You guys follow Simon. He's awesome.
Thanks,
hey, Simon, just before you go, on Fridays, you do something at 1 p.m. Eastern. You do a live show every Friday, don't you?
Yeah, I've got my YouTube channel, Simon Dixon. I do a show called Bitcoin Hard Talk, and I do This Week in Bitcoin, This Week in Macro, and This Week in Geopolitics, and tie it all together into this transition to a world of Bitcoin, AI, and central bank digital currencies. So subscribe to me on YouTube if you like that type of thing.
It's awesome. He's got monster amounts of content, and he's been studying financial markets for 20 years, guys. Great guy to follow. I call him a friend. He's become a friend through this. He's become a friend through the Bitcoin community, actually.